Hello, and thank you for joining us for our third Alfresco webinar and our second focused on the public right-of-way. My name is Denise Knitter, and I am the Senior Small Business and Policy Deputy with the Mayor's Office of Business and Economic Development. As the first webinar held in February was largely focused on the policies and requirements needed to establish an alfresco area in the public right-of-way, which includes sidewalks, street parking spaces, and lanes. Today's presentation will be primarily focused on the application process. Before we get started, a few notes. This webinar is being provided in Spanish as well. Si necesita traducción en español, presione el botón de traducción y elija español. As mentioned, this webinar is solely focused on alfresco on the public right-of-way. Policies applicable to alfresco on private property will not be discussed. Private property regulations and processes will be discussed in next month's webinar on Wednesday, May 1st at noon. The new alfresco application being presented today is required of all businesses that would like to offer alfresco outdoor dining, including for businesses that have a temporary authorization acquired during the COVID-19 local emergency period. Today's webinar will be recorded and posted online, along with recordings of past webinars at buildla.lacity.org/alfresco. If you have any questions, please feel free to add them at any time to the Q&A chat, which can be found on your Zoom menu. Our presenters will answer these questions throughout the presentation by text. You will also have the opportunity to raise your hand and ask questions verbally at the end of this presentation. It is important to note, before we get started, that the type of permit needed for a permanent alfresco varies.
El permanente de alfresco.
I'm sorry, one moment. I think one of our interpreters might be on the wrong channel. Okay, I apologize. It's important to note before we get started that the type of permit needed for permanent alfresco varies by where outdoor dining is located. Outdoor dining that is located in the street or on a sidewalk requires a revocable permit from the Bureau of Engineering. Alfresco on the street also requires a clearance from the Department of Transportation. All alfresco in the public right-of-way will be enforced by the Bureau of Street Services and are subject to inspections by the Bureau of Contract Administration. With that, I would like to go over today's agenda and introduce you to our presenters. First, we have Jacqueline Garcia from the Department of Transportation, who will share the policies and procedures for establishing an alfresco area on the street. Next, we will pass it on to Tanat Satidik from the Bureau of Engineering, who will present the policies and regulations governing the establishment of an alfresco area on the city's sidewalks. He will also discuss the process for applying for a permit to establish an alfresco area on the public right-of-way. Lastly, we will also be joined by Ronnie Huron from the Department of City Planning, who will discuss the process for acquiring an authorization to serve alcohol in an alfresco area. The application portal is now open and accessible via buildla.lacity.org/alfresco. Before I hand it over to our presenters, I would like to spend a few minutes addressing the need for businesses with a temporary authorization to apply early. Temporary authorizations were provided to businesses after the city declared a COVID-19 emergency order in March of 2020. Because we were in a local emergency, the city was able to launch the Al Fresco program without imposing costs, fees, and other regulations that the city would otherwise in normal times. As this emergency period has now long ended, these authorizations will no longer be valid. Any business with an existing temporary authorization had their authorization extended from December 31st, 2023 to July 31st, 2024 to provide sufficient time for businesses to transition to the permanent program without incurring a break in operations. This deadline will not be extended. This is now a crucial time for businesses to make adjustments to their alfresco area and pass inspections by the city. We cannot emphasize enough how important it is to apply early, as the time it will take for plan checks and inspection may impact your business's ability to operate once the temporary authorization becomes invalid. Furthermore, because your business was impacted by the COVID pandemic, Mayor Karen Bass launched a fee relief program by allocating American Rescue Plan Act funds towards the provision of partial fee subsidies to eligible businesses, transitioning from temporary authorizations to revocable permits for the public right-of-way. Businesses can expect to receive subsidies between $975 to $3,000, which will be deducted from their invoice. They will be automatically considered after they apply for a revocable permit, and no additional application is required. A bill will be sent to you with any remaining costs not covered under the relief program. Funding is limited and not guaranteed, so we urge you to apply early while funding is still available. Now, I would like to pass it on to our first presenter, Jacqueline Garcia from the Department of Transportation, to discuss alfresco in the public right-of-way.
Thank you, Denise, and hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. So these next several slides will be specific to on-street dining. In our first webinar in February, we introduced our new set of standards for outdoor dining in the street. These standards were adopted in January and will apply to anyone seeking revocable permits, whether or not you already have a temporary alfresco authorization. These standards focus on, first, safety, meaning your dining area has sufficient protection, will not injure people, and won't impact emergency access. Second, accessibility, meaning your dining area can be accessed by people of all ages and abilities. Third, visibility, meaning your dining area has a clear line of sight through it. This is important because drivers need to see other drivers, and drivers and pedestrians also need to be able to see each other. And lastly, movability, because your dining area may need to be moved for utility work, construction projects, repaving, or for emergencies. These will be at your expense, so it is to your benefit to have a dining area that is easier to move or disassemble. This slide describes the application process if you already have a temporary permit. It is important to note that revocable permits for on-street dining did not exist prior to February 1st. So this is a brand new process, not only for you, but for all of us as well. About 50% of businesses are still at step 1, meaning you will still need to submit an application to transition your permit. This application only takes 10 minutes to complete because it imports a lot of information from your existing temporary permit. We encourage you to at least complete this step as soon as possible because it at least lets us know that you would like to keep your dining area long-term. Fees are not due at the time you submit your application. After you apply, we will do a brief site visit and summarize our findings into a letter, which I will talk more about shortly. You will then sign this letter, which is your way of acknowledging that you will have to make certain changes, and it also tells us that you are still interested in moving forward. This process in the middle will take the longest, which is the time needed for you to make modifications to your dining area, submit plans to us to approve, complete any clearances you have, and upload your insurance. You do not want to feel rushed through this part of the process, so if you apply today, you will still have 4 more months to complete these steps. Your permit must be issued before July 31st, 2024 to have no impact to your outdoor dining operations. Once your permit is issued, your dining area must keep by the approved plan unless you notify us that you would like to change the design of your dining area, and you may potentially have to submit new plans for approval. The process for brand new applicants will be similar. The key difference is that when you submit your application, we will need to first verify if you qualify for on-street dining. If you do, we will provide you with some conditions of approval. Once you agree, we will go ahead and invoice you, and then you will be asked to submit plans for your dining area, which we will review and approve prior to you installing. We have already received almost a dozen submissions for on-street dining. So if you're joining us today and have applied as a brand new applicant, please note at this time, we are still prioritizing our limited resources on getting existing businesses through the process due to their time sensitivity. We hope to get back to you sometime this month. Whether you are an existing business transitioning your temporary permit or you are a brand new applicant, you will receive a letter that looks similar to this in the early stages of your application. For existing businesses, this will be called a compliance letter, and it will serve several purposes. It will summarize your approved footprint and will note if your footprint will need to be modified or reduced. It will note any required modifications you need to make and the date that they will need to be corrected by. If we wrote that something needs to be corrected before the R permit is issued, this means it will need to be corrected before July 31st. We will also note the page number in our policy where we talk about this rule in more detail. This letter also summarizes the plans you will need to submit, other clearances you need to complete, and any other permit requirements like submitting your insurance. Lastly, the letter will specify your permitting fees and any grant dollars that will be reduced from your invoice. The intention of this letter is to summarize and consolidate all of this information into one document. This letter can then be used as your checklist to go through and check off what you have completed and what you will still need to complete. If you have any questions on the content in the letter, please ask us. For brand new applicants, This document will be called a conditions of approval letter and will specify your approved footprint, the required barriers that you have to have, and any planned submittals or clearances you need to complete. This does not give you authority to start installing or constructing. That will happen later in the process. In your compliance letter and on the R Permit portal, you will see a note saying that you have to submit your liability insurance before the permit can be issued. This slide specifies our insurance requirements for on-street dining. Your broker or agent will need to upload your insurance documents onto our city's Quick Comply website. I also ask that you send a copy to us, whether by email or submitting it as an attachment in your application. Quick Comply does not communicate to us when you have uploaded insurance, so this helps us know that you have completed this step. You can also find a link to this document on our Build LA website and also in your compliance letter. These next few slides will be specific to existing businesses only. As I mentioned previously, in the compliance letter, we will specify any required modifications you need to make. Almost all businesses will have these types of items listed. We will be requiring you to install an object marker sign, which is the black and yellow striped sign you see on the left. This measures 12 inches by 36 inches and can be drilled or stickered onto your dining area or can be posted on a bollard. This sign will need to face oncoming traffic. We will also require you to put reflective tape or stickers on the corners of your dining area. This is so that cars can better see your dining area at night. If you already have a deck, one of the most common modifications we will tell you is that you either need to create a drainage opening underneath your deck for water to flow through, or if you already have one, we will tell you to add a screen over the opening like you see here. These next couple of slides will show the most common examples of what would need to be modified. The two photos on the left show examples of visibility issues. If your wall exceeds 42 inches high, or if your plants exceed the height of 42 inches, you will need to reduce the height before your permit is issued. If your roof is solid, you will need to replace it with a fabric roof instead. We always encourage you to not have a fixed roof and instead use movable shade umbrellas because your plan review will be much simpler. Also, if you currently do not have a deck, you will need to construct one. In some cases, we may allow a ramp instead. Whether you have a deck or a ramp, they must meet California Building Code standards on accessibility as it relates to floor surface, slope, landing space, accessible routes, etc. Here are some other types of modifications that I have been noting to applicants. If you have something opaque on the vertical side, like a tarp, that will need to be removed as it goes against our requirement of having visibility above 42 inches high. We also do not allow propane heaters under an awning of any kind, whether umbrellas, canopies, or fabric roofs. This is a fire code provision. As I mentioned earlier, if you already have a deck, you will need a drainage area. Otherwise, water will pool up next to your dining area when it does rain. And lastly, I want to emphasize that LADOT cannot permit items on the sidewalk. Our authority only lies on the street. So if you have decorations on the sidewalk, like planters, you will need to have them reviewed by the Bureau of Engineering for approval, and it could add more time to your application. It is easiest if you keep all decorations within your on-street dining area. Some businesses also have custom fabricated structures that have the columns or posts of the structure sit on the sidewalk. This will very likely not be allowed, so we ask that you keep your footprint fully contained on the street only. These next few slides will go over planned submittals. Every business will be asked to provide a site plan and a seating plan. These can very often be accomplished with one plan. This will allow us to review your dining area for compliance with state accessibility requirements. Depending on your operations and what your dining area looks like, you may be asked for the following additional plans. A site plan if you serve alcohol. This plan does not go to LADOT, but will be submitted to the Department of City Planning. They will discuss this later in the presentation. A landscaping plan if you have plants in your dining area. This can be part of your site plan and simply specifies where your plants are located and will note details on what type of plants they are. And lastly, if you have vertical columns or posts that extend past 42 inches, you will need to submit a structural plan. You will have an opportunity to waive or remove these last two plan reviews if you move any columns or if you remove your plants. This is an example of a site plan. It is drawn to scale so we can obtain the measurements for items shown on the plan. Your site plan will need to show city infrastructure like parking meters, streetlights, and hydrants. It also combines the seating plan on here with details or specifications on the chairs and tables you would like to see on the right. Most of your elevated objects like chairs, tables, planters, etc. can be shown as callouts or details on the plan. Since these plans are used for our accessibility review, it will help if you identify your accessible dining area and the accessible route to that dining area. Your compliance letter or conditions of approval letter will have more specifics on the plan requirements. If you have plants in your existing dining area, you will be asked to provide a landscaping plan. This requirement can be removed if you remove your plants that are on the street. This plan review will not be performed by LADOT, and plans will be submitted to the Department of Public Works Bureau of Street Services, which oversees landscaping in the public right-of-way. The plan you see on the right is the same location as the previous slide, but this is a separate plan sheet that focuses on landscaping. It specifies the location, the name of the plant species, and the size of the planter. For the most part, the city will be reviewing to make sure it is not a plant that will be tall at maturity, it is not a noxious plant or a plant with spines or thorns. The dining area you see on the top right is one that would need to undergo a structural review, while the one on the bottom right will not. The key difference between these two is the one on the top has vertical columns that exceed 42 inches high. So if you have these, you can choose to remove the columns and skip this plan review. Otherwise, you will need to submit structural plans with calculations that are stamped by a California licensed civil or structural engineer. Even if your dining area has these columns only to hang string lights, you will still need to go through this plan review. The review is at a cost of $149 an hour. This review would be performed and approved by the Department of Public Works Bureau of Engineering. And lastly, LADOT has a limited amount of shade umbrellas that we can provide to businesses, whether you are new or existing. This would be good if you would like to remove your roof and use shade umbrellas instead. These umbrellas only come in blue and are 8 feet wide. We can provide 2 per business and would deliver them on site. So if you are interested, please reach out to us by email at ladot.alfresco@lacity.org. And next, I will pass it off to Tana to talk about sidewalk dining.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Now I'm going to go over the sidewalk dining revocable permit process and requirements. This is an overview of the revocable permit or R permit application process for transitioning applicants. To begin the online R permit application, all applicants must obtain an engineer account and log into the R permit website. For the transitioning applicants, there is an automated transition process in which the R permit will be issued automatically after the fee of $149 is paid. Before receiving the permit, the applicants will be required to comply with the disability access requirements and acknowledge that permit requirements will be completed within 6 months after receiving the permit. Now, after receiving the permit, the applicant can print out a permit placard to display it at the storefront. There is no plan review as the permit is issued automatically. However, the applicants are required to also comply with the Fresco rules from the temporary program. For the permit requirements, the applicants will be required to complete 3 permit requirements within 6 months after receiving the permit. The 3 requirements include 1. Provide proof of liability insurance. 2. Pay the sewer facility charge. 3. Sign and authorize the waiver of damages form. If the requirements are not met within 6 months after receiving the permit can be revoked. Now, for new applicants, once they begin the online application, they will be required to submit a sketch or plan showing dimensions to provide a copy of the lease agreement. New applicants will be required to pay the Tier 1 fee of $556 for all new sidewalk dining applications. However, if BOE is required to do a field investigation due to discrepancies in the site conditions, the Tier 2 fee of $1,854 will be required. Also, for cases where the Board of Public Works approval is required to deviate from the sidewalk dining policy, or there is a request to appeal the BOE decision to the board, the Tier 3 fee or actual cost is required. For new applicants, BOE will perform a technical review of the proposed encroachments to verify that the designs are safe and suitable for the public right of way. The disability access requirements will be part of the review. Usually, it takes about 1 week or less for BOE review per each time. After BOE accepts the design, the applicant will be required to complete all permit requirements. After all the permit requirements are completed, the R permit will be issued. In addition to that, if there is installation or construction in a public right of way, including fixed railing installation, an A permit will be required. After receiving the R permit, the applicant can print out a permit placard to display it at the storefront. Now, to get ready to begin the R permit application, for transitioning applicants, they will only need the email address that was used for the temporary Fresco authorization. Please make sure that the same email address is also used for the engineer account to begin the R permit application. To get ready and begin the R permit application for new applicants, they will be required to submit a sketch or plan showing the property line, all street furniture or elements, configuration of tables and chairs, exits, aisle widths, and all disabled access features. If fixed railings are proposed, the plan must include structural details stamped by a licensed engineer. Continuing from the previous slide, in addition to the plan, a copy of the lease agreement is required as proof of legal tenancy. Now, this is a list of typical allowable encroachments. Please be advised that under the temporary Fresco authorization, only tables, chairs, umbrellas, shade structures, and heaters are allowed. Therefore, for those that are transitioning, there should be no planters and railings. However, for those that have already installed planters or railings and want to keep them, this will require permit modification, a plan review, and additional permit fees. For the new applicants, all encroachments, including planters and railings, will need to be shown on the plan. All encroachments are required to follow our standard placement requirements for sidewalk dining, which include 1. A 5-foot wide pedestrian access route shall be maintained and clear of any obstructions. However, the pedestrian access route can be 4 feet if fixed railings are installed. 2. No encroachments shall be within 6 feet of a public transportation purpose or loading zone. 3. No encroachments shall be within 5 feet from the edge of driveway and ADA ramps. 4. No encroachments shall be within 2 feet from the back of curb face. 5. No encroachments shall be within the visibility triangle, which is an area 45 feet from the street corner. Talking about permit requirements, after BOE accepts the proposed sidewalk dining plan, BOE will generate permit requirements and notify the applicant. This is a list of requirements that the applicant will need to complete in order to receive the revocable permit. The typical requirements are, first, the applicant will need to provide proof of liability insurance by submitting it to quickcomply.org with a minimum of $1 million of general liability limit. Second, the applicant will need to pay the sewer facility charge or FFC fee for additional outdoor seating based on the number of seats allowed. Third, the applicant will need to sign and authorize the waiver of damages form. It will need to be signed by an entity with signatory authority on behalf of the property owner, lessee, or applicant assistant authorized by BOE. BOE will prepare this waiver of damages form for the applicant when all other requirements are completed. Lastly, depending on the location and the scope of work, the applicant may be required to obtain approval from other governmental agencies. For example, approval from the Brook Street Services is required for sidewalk dining that has plantings or landscaping. City planning approval is also required for sidewalk dining in a historical area or specific planned area, and sidewalk dining that wants to serve alcohol. And to help streamline the alcohol service approval process, BOE will provide a routing transmittal to the applicant to obtain approval from city planning. A copy of the routing transmittal is shown on the screen. After completing all of the permit requirements, the R permit will be issued. The applicant can print out a copy of the permit placard or restaurant permit from the same revocable permit portal. The placard must be displayed at the storefront. For the next 8 slides, we will be guiding you through the steps to apply for a revocable permit for sidewalk dining and on-street dining. To begin the online R permit application, applicants must create an Gmail account and log into the R permit website. The applicants can also go to engpermits.lacity.org and click on the online service available link as shown on the screen. Next, please click on the Apply for New Permit link located on the top of the screen. After that, the applicants will be presented with pre-screening questions. For new applicants, please select option 1. For the transitioning applicants, please select option 2. Both transitioning and new applicants can choose to apply for on-street dining only, sidewalk dining only, or both on-street and sidewalk dining under a single application. For those who are transitioning, a list of restaurants will be generated automatically using the same email address that was used in the temporary Fresco program. With this, the transitioning applicants will be able to choose the restaurant that they would like to transition. After selecting the restaurant and confirming the applicant information, the transitioning applicants will be presented with the instructions and requirements that they need to agree in order to proceed to the appropriate process. For sidewalk dining, the applicants will be required to accept the permit requirements and disability access requirements as shown on the left. For on-street dining, the applicants will be informed that their application has been received and submitted to LADOT for review, as shown on the right. For new applicants, they are required to provide the information and required documents under each link as shown on the screen. Now, after creating the online application, applicants can monitor the application status, upload additional documents, and print the final permit or placard under the application portal as shown on the screen. We encourage applicants to log into your application portal regularly for new status updates and pending actions. There are 4 tabs that we would like the applicants to be familiar with. Tab number 1, this is the permit processing tab, which provides the status of your application and comments from the plan checker. Tab number 2, this is the application requirements tab that shows a list of required documents in order to submit a complete application package. Tab number 3, the permit requirements tab, contains a list of items to be completed in order to receive the permit. Tab number 4, the attachments tab allows the applicant to upload and download the required documents. I will now pass on to my colleague, Ronnie Hiran from City Planning to talk about alcohol standards and authorization process.
Thank you, Tanaj. The Department of City Planning, Beverage and Entertainment Streamline Unit is pleased to present and to administer the streamlined alfresco authorization process from start to finish. In order to serve alcohol in an outdoor dining area, whether on private property or within the public right-of-way, certain standards apply. All alcohol must be delivered and served at tables by employees. All patrons must be seated, and only fixed or portable bars not used as point of sale are permitted. In order to be eligible for alfresco alcohol authorization, a restaurant must have an existing city approval for alcohol service and a valid license from the California Department of Alcoholic Beverages Control. All alfresco alcohol authorizations may be voided upon enforcement actions, citations, fines, or revocations. An alfresco alcohol authorization is granted following verification of relevant approvals, licenses, and plans. A request for alfresco alcohol authorization is submitted on the Department of City Planning's online application portal, or OAS. To initiate that request, applicants will need to submit the following information: an ABC license number, a site plan showing the location of the outdoor dining areas, seating, and points of sale. In addition, a separate primary alcohol authorization from the City of Los Angeles, which may include an approval through a conditional use permit, excuse me, restaurant beverage program authorization, or a legal non-conforming status for alcohol sales as of March 1st, 1977. Operations with a valid temporary use authorization from the Department of City Planning may be evidence of the authorization to qualify for a fee waiver and deemed to be approved status. Projects that also require a permit from the Department of Building and Safety for on-site outdoor dining area may submit the relevant LADBS clearance summary worksheet for clearance when submitting the documentation for the alfresco alcohol authorization. Once the relevant information is submitted, a project description is provided and all relevant parcels of land on the project site are identified in the outline application system. City planning staff will create a case number and issue an invoice for minor clearance fee. For operators that do not have a valid temporary use authorization from LADOT, the current fee amount is $384.99. If it applies, this fee is adjusted annually. The deadline to obtain a fee waiver is January 31st, 2025. Excuse me. Once the case is created and the applicable fee is paid, city planning staff will begin a simple, formal verification process prior to authorization, provided that the site plan identifies the location of outdoor dining areas, seating, and points of sale. A primary alcohol authorization is applicable and valid with the relevant conditions met. And once a formal an ABC license shall be valid. Once the formal verification is complete, the authorization will be provided to the applicant in the form of a stamped site plan. Any required clearance from LADBS for private property, outdoor dining areas concurrently proposed will also be issued. And any required notices to ABC will also be issued. The department is also preparing an authorization form that will also be provided to applicants. Additional information on alcohol authorization is available on the Department of City Planning website under the alcohol sales page. Commonly missed items. The items commonly missed by applicants when applying for the permanent alfresco authorization requests are previously approved entitlements such a conditional use permit and restaurant beverage programs authorizations in a site plan. Conditional use permit and restaurant beverage program. These images are of the first page of a conditional use permit and the first page of a restaurant beverage program authorization. Any of these two documents is required to be submitted with the permanent alfresco application. If none of these documents exist, proof that the sale of alcoholic beverages prior to March 1977 will be required. Site plan. Site plans require certain features to be shown. Some of these features are the outline of the entire site, the restaurant's address, street names, sidewalks, tenant space number or identification, doors and other points of entry, dimension outdoor seating areas with chairs and tables, and the north arrow. Please note, there are other standards which are not shown in this example, which may be required depending on the special site conditions. And with that, I conclude, and I'll turn it over to Tanat Satirkit.
Thank you, Ronnie. Now I wanted to discuss the disability access requirements. Dining facilities must be accessible. Plans will be reviewed for accessibility, including accessible route, knee clearance, and toe clearance. The city has created a toolkit to guide businesses in meeting their obligations to provide equal access to customers with disabilities. The toolkit can be found in the link shown on the screen, or go to ENG Permit Manual at .lacity.org. Again, ENG Permit Manual.lacity.org, and search for Disabled Access Toolkit. Now, we will be talking about the anticipated fees related to outdoor dining permits in a public right-of-way. For sidewalk dining, as briefly explained on the previous slides, since there are no planters and railings in the temporary program, the transitioning applicants will only need to pay the fee of $149 and the sewer facility charge fee per seat. For the new applicants, they will be required to pay the Tier 1 fee of $556 and the sewer facility charge fee per seat. In addition to that, for installation or construction in a public right-of-way, the applicants will be required to pay the structural review fee and a permit fee in order to obtain an A permit to do construction and have inspection be performed by the Bureau of Contract Administration. I will now go ahead and pass this to my colleague, Jacqueline Garcia from LADOT, to talk about the on-street dining fees.
Thank you. So in our last webinar, I went over the 3 types of required fees for on-street dining, as well as the 2 types of, if applicable, fees that he previously discussed. The required fees are the application review fee, the revocable permit fee, and the sewer fee, which is assessed per seat. This chart shows an example of what someone's invoice would look like if they were an existing temporary permit holder that is a fast food or limited service restaurant with 12 seats. Based on multiplying the fast food seat fee of 138 times the 12 seats, their total fees would have been $3,005. However, due to the mayor's small business fee reduction program, we would be paying for the first 2 permit fees in full and would also pay for 6 of their seats, which in total amounts to $2,177, leaving them with a balance due of $828. I have seen several businesses already end up with an invoice of $0. Where you will start to see your invoice go above $2,500 is if you have more than 20 seats in your dining area. Please ensure that you have the correct number of seats listed in your application rather than an estimate, because you are paying based on that amount. We can edit the quantity for you if needed. I also want to note that please do not combine your sidewalk dining seats into your on-street dining seat total. These fees are not due at the time you submit your application, but are due before the permit is issued. And next, I will pass it back to Denise to wrap up the webinar.
Thank you, Jacqueline. To further assist all transitioning and new applicants, the following resources are now available. An online alfresco guide can be found at buildla.lacity.org/alfresco. It details requirements, costs, and answers to most frequently asked questions. This site is the city's main hub for alfresco related information. An LA Alfresco Disabled Access Toolkit is now available for businesses to learn how to provide equal access to customers with disabilities in the public right-of-way. Also, the alfresco dining revocable permit procedure and requirements for both sidewalk and on-street can be found through these links listed. They detail design requirements and other information you will need to create or modify your alfresco dining area. If you need help applying, please contact one of the city's 10 business source centers. Business consultants can provide businesses assistance at no cost. Looking ahead, you can expect the following. We would like to invite you to join us next month on Wednesday, May 1st, for a webinar focused on alfresco on private property. As of now, there are no more scheduled webinars. Please email us at mayor.business@lacity.org to let us know if you feel additional assistance is needed. We appreciate your feedback. We know how difficult it might be to understand some of the design requirements. To assist you, the city is working on an alfresco manual to help translate these policies into photos and graphs. This manual will become available in March. By next year, we also hope to offer standard design plans to save businesses time and money. I want to thank you again for participating in today's webinar. To assist you, we have listed contacts for you to reach out with any questions. With that, I will begin to moderate our live Q&A. Please raise your hand if you would like to ask a question. If you have asked your question in writing in the Q&A box, please look to make sure it hasn't been answered before raising your hand to ask the same question. Okay, I see Justin De Leon has raised his hand. Justin, you're unmuted. Could you please ask your question?
Yes, we're in a look. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. We're in an area that's currently wrapping up metro construction, and we've been told that there will be no more street closures. Instead of like applying and finding out, oh, we can't apply because of metro construction, is there a way for us to find out in advance if our location is even eligible before we go through the whole process?
And then just to confirm, this is for on-street.
Yes.
Would Jacqueline, would you be able to answer this question?
Yeah, it would be best to discuss the specifics of your location offline. So you can reach out to us at the email shown here, which is ladot.alfresco@lacity.org. And please provide your business name and address.
Got it. And I have one last question. If we're a to-go restaurant and we do apply for either sidewalk or street, do we need a public restroom?
I can answer this. That is not part of our sidewalk dining policy.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sophia Burdetsky, I see you have your hand raised. You can unmute.
Okay. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I wanted to find out if you have companies or somebody who can help through this process, because it's very difficult to understand this whole process with the drawings and everything that has to be done. Is there a company that we can hire to help us through this process?
Sophia, the city is not able to recommend companies to assist you through the process, but we've tried to gather the resources to make it easier to understand.
Mhm.
If you have specific questions, we can connect you to the people on this call, the departments on this call, to help review the plan with you. And you can contact us to start via email, and we can set up appointments from there. Tanat, did you want to add anything?
No, I was just gonna say exactly what you said. This might be considered as advertising, and we don't advertise and help we don't advertise for other businesses basically.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Paulina Lopez Velasquez, I see your hand is raised. You can now unmute. And if you've already asked a question and we've answered it, to satisfaction, could you please lower your hand? Paulina, if you're speaking, you are still muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Sorry, I didn't know how to do it. I have a question. All of these apply. I know everything that you guys are talking about was like sidewalk or street, but what about like we had a parking like spaces that we converted and it's within the property, which is what am I looking at? What are my requirements for this space?
So,
We're not on the sidewalk, we're not on the street.
so to be clear, the parking spaces you converted are on private property.
Yes.
So you want to join us next month on May 1st for our private property webinar. We already hosted one last month in March, and
Oh.
on the website, the LA Al Fresco website that we've promoted, you can see the recording of last month's webinar, and all the questions that were asked during the FAQ are in the recording and also written out in text in the FAQ section. If you have specific questions we didn't answer, please join us to ask the question again next month, or you can email us at one of the emails here to also help you with your specific plan. Does that help answer the question?
Yes, I did. I was like, when is my turn for my information? Great, amazing.
Yes.
Okay, I'll look at that. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Alexandra Stafford, I see your hand is raised. You can now unmute.
Yes, this is a little similar to the last question that someone else asked, but more specific. Do you have a list of permit expediters that could be available to us?
To not correct me if I'm wrong, but that falls in the same category, right? The city is not able to recommend private businesses like permit expediters, so I apologize. But if you'd like to speak to, like I said, we have a long list of resources. In addition to all the resources on this page, the business source centers are scattered throughout the city, and you can make an appointment or walk in to those centers, and a person in person is able to help walk you through this process as well. So that's a city resource that's available to you at no cost.
Yeah, this process is very lengthy and complicated for someone who doesn't do this all day, every day. And in the past, I know you can't recommend someone specific, but what the city does do is give a list, a long list of people who do this for a living.
I see. I'm not familiar with that list, but let me speak with my colleagues. Alexandra, would you be able to send us an email to the final email on the slide, mayor.business@lacity.org,
Yes.
so that I have your contact information? I will speak to my team internally, and if we do have a list like that, I'll work to send it to you and include it in the next webinar and on the website. But my understanding at this time is that we're not able to provide a similar list.
Okay. Thank you very much. I will send an email.
Do you know what type of person does do this expediting? Is it a revocable permit expediter that would know how
I'm
to
sorry,
navigate?
I'm not familiar with it. I apologize. I don't think that we're able to advise on matters like permit expediting from the private sector.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Jessica Nunez, I see your hand is raised. You can now unmute to ask your question.
Hi, thank you very much. My question is simple. I had actually a computer issue when starting the application from a temporary to a revocable. Somebody is trying to help me, but I think he's in the incorrect department. I'm doing the sidewalk only, and the email I found was for the LADOT. So I know that he was trying to help me, but I don't want to continue to ask for him to help me or her to help me there if they're not even supposed to, I guess, for my issue it in directly. Is there somebody else who could help me in the internet world for this issue that we encountered when submitting the application?
I can answer this. Hi, this is Tanet from BOE. If it's
Thank you.
related to sidewalk dining, and it seems like this is for this specific application, please feel free to submit customer service request, or what we
Mhm.
call is CSR, and the link is shown on the screen, which is engpermits.lacity.org/public. When
Okay,
you
so
submit that, I will answer that myself, or I will assign that to my plan checker to answer that for you, to you. Okay.
great. Okay, thank you very much for that.
Thank you. I know we're at 1 o'clock. I do see some hand raised. Since Marcia raised her hand before 1 o'clock, I want to answer your question. And then for Justin and Mo, could you please submit your questions in writing, either to email or the Q&A box? If your question has not been answered, we will work to answer it and post the answer online on the Build LA Alfresco website. It will go up within a week of business days usually, and we will work to answer everything to the best of our abilities. So for now, Marcia or Marcia, I apologize about the name, you'll be the last question. You are able to unmute.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I just put my question on the chat. I'm working on expediting the this process. So if somebody's interested, could I leave my information here, my email?
Marcia,
or
I apologize, but this isn't an appropriate forum to promote a private business. We're not able to do that during a city webinar. I apologize. Thank you.
It's okay.
Okay, so as that was the last question, we will be ending this webinar. I will leave the webinar up for another moment. So if you do have a question and would like to put it in the Q&A box, please do so now, or email one of the emails on the screen here with a relevant question. We will work to answer these in writing and post them on the Build LA Alfresco website in the FAQ section, which is also our main hub for Alfresco information. If you would like to learn how to do this process for private property, again, there is another webinar on May 1st, also at noon, and RSVPs are linked in the Alfresco Hub website. Thank you.